Welcome back. A 55-year U.S. travel ban to Cuba has been lifted, and this week JetBlue will be the first commercial U.S. airline to fly into Cuba. What will this mean for the airline and tourism? We want to bring in right now Gabe, Saglie, senior editor at Travelzoo. Gabe, good to see you.
Good morning, Maria.
What are you expecting?
Well, we're expecting prices to actually soften, and interest has been high, obviously, for the last year. We've seen prices on packages to Cuba drop about 45 to 50% year over year. On our own website at Travelzoo.com, searches for travel to Cuba up 200+%. So interest is there. These commercial flights with JetBlue starting on Wednesday. They'll become daily flights in October. American and Silver Airways will start commercial flights in September. So I think we'll start to see the easing of certainly restrictions over time and increased interest as prices soften. Some of these JetBlue flights, by the way, one way starting at $99. So all of a sudden, what was way off the radar has become a lot more accessible as of now. Yeah, and now American Airlines is going to start flying from Miami to Cuba in September. There will be 20 daily flights to Havana by the end of the year. In terms of what you're seeing at Travelzoo, is there a lot of interest here? Is there a lot of web traffic about Cuba? Yeah, as soon as the thawing of relations occurred last year, we saw about a 205% increase just in searches in travel to Cuba. We saw a lot more players come on board with vacation packages. Some names, Friendly Planet, Gate One, all of a sudden mainstream travel companies offering packages out there. I think what we'll see in the next year is the cruise industry pick up speed. Royal Caribbean is waiting to get access to cruising around Cuba. And we're seeing, I think, as vacation packages have come on board, all of a sudden cruises now are starting to pick up speed as well. So I think between now and the end of 2017, cruising out of Florida will pick up, and I think prices will soften accordingly. Yeah, it sounds like the entire industry benefits, whether it's cruise ships or flights or hotels. Marriott also gearing up to build more and expand its hotel business in Cuba. You know, we were talking about this earlier, Gabe, that so many of us spend so much time planning this dream vacation, but we don't think about travel safety. Talk to about some of the travel safety tips that so many of us ignore. One of the things many of us do not do is register with the State Department, for example. What are the tips that are real important and why? Well, you know, that service through the State Department is called STEP, Safe Traveler Enrollment Program. Honestly, several years ago, it was reserved for trips to civil war-torn areas in Africa, the Middle East. Perhaps if you were going on an exotic vacation to climb the mountains of Nepal, you would register your trip with the State Department as a safety measure. Now, because of security concerns, because of things like Zika, all of a sudden, mainstream destinations, landmark cities in Europe, you're taking a vacation out there, registering your trips with the State Department is a good idea. It's a free service. It allows you to get any travel warnings or alerts that are issued to your destination before you take off. And once you're out there, if there's any civil unrest, demonstrations, or any terror attack that happens overseas, it does allow the embassy or the consulate at your destination to get a hold of you much more easily. If anything happens back home while you're away, it's an easier way to get a hold of you when you're traveling abroad, particularly if you've got a lot of stops in your itinerary on your overseas trip. A couple of other things to keep in mind. Leave your itinerary with someone you love and trust back home, particularly if you have a lot of stops along the way. When I traveled to the Dominican with my wife a couple of years ago, we were at one bar by one beach for the whole week, so it was easy to find us. But if you're traveling to multiple destinations throughout Europe, throughout Africa, for example, having an itinerary with someone who knows how to find you easily certainly creates, if nothing else, peace of mind for someone who's worrying about you back home. It makes a lot of sense. I don't know why many of us don't do it, actually, but all of these things are important. Passports, for example, they're required for international travel. What happens if your passport is lost or stolen? A lot of people say you should make a paper copy or an electronic copy of your passport, but do people do that? You know, I think the idea of carrying paper for a lot of people has become a bit of a hassle. I traveled to Canada last week. I actually took photographs with my iPhone of my passport because I flew into Vancouver and drove across the border to Seattle. And just having my passport accessible as photographs on my phone, that gave me a little peace of mind. Mind you, a scanned copy of your passport is not necessarily going to get you through the way that your actual passport will, but it makes it easier, certainly as an extra layer of ID, and makes it recovering your passport and getting it reissued that much easier. So it's easy to do now.
Right.
If you don't want to deal with paper, just scan it, photograph it, and just have it as an extra layer of protection.
How about using your phone? Obviously, we're all guilty of these things, using our phones to entertain ourselves. Why shouldn't we be doing this when traveling abroad?
Well, it's a red flag depending on where you are. There are some destinations that are very popular, but also popular with pickpockets. And having your iPhone out, your latest version of your favorite Android, is just sort of a red flag, just as fancy jewelry might be, or a very fancy, purse or bag. So being discreet and being very cautious and careful with how you store some of these items that are very easy to lift out of a pocket is certainly something we probably keep in mind when we're, at home and traveling down the street there in New York City. Traveling abroad, I think you just have to use that as an extra layer of protection. Yeah. There are a lot more eyes on you.
Speaking about lifting information, you could also lift information. I was told by a Treasury official years ago that when the Treasury officials travel to places like China and Russia, they are not allowed to bring their BlackBerry, because as soon as you enter airspace of any of these countries, they have access to all your stuff. So you might want to consider that when using your phone as well, making your content in your phone vulnerable to hacking. Gabe, great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Maria.
Gabe, Saglie joining us there. Still